Well, Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi, a Democrat who represents Illinois' 8th District, joins me this morning via Zoom. Congressman, nice to see you again.
Hey, thank you so much. Same here, Paul.
So before we get to all the issues you're dealing with, we do want to talk a little bit about the country in mourning right now over the horrific plane crash over the Potomac on Wednesday evening. In a press conference the next morning, the president put the blame on former President Biden, Democrats, DEI policies, all suggesting that they were not hiring the most qualified traffic controllers, but that he's doing that now. Do you have a response to the president's claims?
I thought it was disgusting. I thought that blaming DEI for what happened is absolutely the wrong approach to dealing with this horrible tragedy. First, my prayers and sympathies go to the families of the victims. And then second, I think the right approach is to just try to figure out what the heck happened, conclude the investigation, don't jump to conclusions, and then decide what needs to be done to prevent this from happening again. I think that is the right approach, not to frame everything through some kind of partisan or ideological lens and then, basically miss the opportunity to prevent this from happening again.
Let's turn to the president's list of promises, deportation efforts he talked about on day one. Sure enough, those are undergone and ongoing, and here in Chicago as well. I'm sort of curious, as you know, our state local laws prevent local law enforcement from assisting ICE in these federal efforts to find people. But that being said, the federal government has the authority to do what it's doing. Do you have any advice at the state or local level as to how, for example, Chicago can somehow work with the Trump administration to get some control over the situation so that people who should not be deported are not swept up in all of this, and perhaps people who have done bad things, they're found? What advice do you have?
Well, I think my advice is, look, I think most of our constituents probably think that it's reasonable to remove people with deportation orders or who are convicted criminals. And if that is the case, then I think ICE working with local law enforcement should be able to do this and do it in an orderly fashion, not in one where there are raids of schools, hospitals, or churches that basically end up sweeping up the innocent with the guilty. One of the most kind of disturbing reports I saw was Bloomberg said that 260 people were targeted in Chicago, but only 7 of them actually fell within those 2 categories of people, either people with deportation orders or who were convicted criminals. And so I think that is a problem, because you're inevitably going to sweep up a lot of others as collateral damage, so to speak. And in the process, you're really potentially devastating lives, devastating families.
Prior to your joining me on the set, as you saw that we talked about the fact that this order to freeze all funding and all monies going to various agencies that came along with a memo from the Office of Budget, which got rescinded. People are very confused now. Is money frozen? Is it not frozen? So 2 questions. 1, can you clear it up? And number 2, it's my understanding that Congress controls the purse strings. So what power does the executive branch have to do what it's doing?
I wish I could clear it up, but I can't. I think there's just confusion, Paul. As you know, this particular order and the memo accompanying it basically froze funding for everything from Head Start for kids to Meals on Wheels for seniors to food stamps and SNAP. And that's a personal issue for me, because I actually benefited from food stamps as a child when my family went through hardship. It also ended up freezing Medicaid payments, and that almost froze the entire healthcare system. I think that you're absolutely right. The power of the purse is with Congress. So what the president tried to do in that executive order is unconstitutional and it's illegal. And I think that thanks to public outcry and shining a spotlight on it by people like you in the media, the president did rescind that memo, but he said somehow that the order is in effect. So I think that this is unfortunately going to continue to cause confusion going forward.
Something else interesting people may have read about, but I got to take you back in history a little bit. Back to like 2011, 2012, there is a sort of, at that time, a fringe writer named Curtis Yarvin. He's had the ear of Vice President Vance, and he said his desire is for America to have an American monarchy, and one way to do that is through a program he called RAGE, Retire All Government Employees. Sounded ridiculous until we heard earlier in the week the president and the administration has now offered all federal employees the opportunity to retire, be paid through September. Lots of questions about that, but interesting that it ties into this plan of many years ago. It sounds like it's an effort that's long been in the works.
Again, I don't know if this is legal. It sounds illegal to me because, again, Congress has the power with regard to appropriations and even the Civil Service Code with regard to federal employees. Putting that aside, this particular effort, again, could threaten the chaos and confusion and incompetence that seemed to accompany what happened earlier in the week with regard to the federal funding freeze. And what I mean by that is, you have all kinds of employees in very sensitive positions throughout the government who are handling important functions that our constituents rely on. And so when the president issues these types of memos or directives, it could cause confusion in staffing. And then when a senior calls into the Social Security Administration to try to fix a problem with the Social Security check, which, by the way, happens frequently, they're not going to get someone on the other end of the line, potentially. The same could be true for other agencies. And so we have to be very, very careful with regard to these types of edicts about federal employees as well.
An issue of prime concern for a lot of people, of course, medications and drugs important to you. You're a ranking member of the Health and Financial Services Oversight Subcommittee. As you know, the president issued an executive order basically doing away with the requirement of the government and Medicaid to sit down and work on bringing the prices down for the latest list of 15 drugs, Ozempic included among them. A couple of questions. Number one, your reaction to that. Number two, does that impact previous drugs like insulin, where a deal was reached with the Biden administration? Do you know, does it lift that?
I don't know. We need to figure that out. I don't think it does. But on the other hand, we have to kind of look and see what the impact of these executive orders are on previous decisions. But again, this is a gift to the pharmaceutical industry. This is exactly what they want. They want these drugs to be sky high, and they don't want Medicare to be able to negotiate the price of prescription drugs. And oh, by the way, with regard to those first 10 prescription drugs that were negotiated by Medicare Part D, that is projected to save $50 billion over 10 years. So this is significant money that the taxpayer is saving from this particular provision of the Inflation Reduction Act. So any rollback of that particular act or executive action in doing so is not only questionable from a legal standpoint, but it also hurts taxpayers by making them spend more for prescription drugs than they have to.
You know, the president, of course, fired 18 inspectors general. He did it in violation of the law that required a 30-day notice to Congress. But my question to you is, and this is a general question I think Democrats around the country are asking, Democrats seem to be, there's crickets coming from the Democratic Party about all of these things that are going on. We know Republicans control the House and the Senate, but are people right to think that the Democrats are just not loud enough about anything?
Well, I think that we have to speak out. And when we speak out and speak up, there can be positive change. Just look at what happened with regard to the federal funding freeze earlier this week. Because of the public outcry, because members of Congress and others and the media, of course, put a spotlight on this issue, the Trump administration rolled back their directive. I think we have to do the same thing with regard to other issues as well. And I should just add one other thing we need to do as lawmakers, which is one source of leverage are our votes. The Trump administration absolutely relies on our votes for certain parts of their governance. And so we need to make sure that when they rely on our votes, that we also condition it on sanity and competence and a reasonable execution of the laws as we go forward.
Congressman, out of time, but a very quick yes or no question. Senator Durbin waiting to see if he's going to run for office again. A lot of people think you might be thinking about it, yes or no. Are you considering a run for Senate should the senator retire?
There's no vacancy. I hope he runs for re-election, Paul.
All right. Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Have a good Sunday. We'll talk to you again soon, friend.
Thank you so much, Paul.